All right, we'll go ahead and call South Broadway at this time.
1 p.m. case, Stephanie Kazuma and Andrea Burkett, Exile on Broadway, LLC, trading as Exile, 702 South Broadway. Class BB7 beer, wine and liquor license, application, transfer ownership, and location of the Class BB7 beer, wine and liquor license presently at the location, 404 East Baltimore Street, to the applicants at the new location, 702 South Broadway. Everybody testifying, please step forward and raise your right hand.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kadensky.
For the record, Melvin J. Kaninsky, representing the applicants in this case. This is an application to transfer a license from down on Baltimore Street from the plaza. Mr. Gordon is here. As you may remember, that was a place that had a fire, big fire on Baltimore Street. Unfortunately, the owner of the building was underinsured. Couldn't do anything, as a result of which he was had to vacate. The only thing left him with was his license that he's trying to sell BD7. In this case here, there was an application to transfer the license down the 700 block of South Broadway, where there was a license a few years ago that the board saw fit not to allow to stay there. I don't know whether it's important for you to know the history of that area or not, but
No, I always love it, but I don't think it's going to matter.
well, I mean, I'm saying it started out years ago as a strip joint. It was Billy's Show Bar years ago, and down the street was Sadie's Show Bar. And there was, I think it was a place where one of the dancers got bit by a snake. A snake attached herself to her and had to take her. I think that she was looking at me at the time. So, and the applicants in this case, the Burkett family has been down in Fells Point for 20-something years. They own the Sound Garden. The husband owns the place on Bond Street. They have a unique concept that they want to go ahead and use in that location. They met with the various community groups in the area. Mr. Holmes is here, who has the big development native street. He's there in favor. And I think the point is that, you know, anything that's not a vacant building that has some viability to it, that has employment, certainly is better, assuming that they run according to the rules and regulations of the board. If they don't, the prior person found out how, you know, all too well what could happen to you if you did not run the place appropriately. At this time, I call Ms. Burkert. You want to step up?
Yes.
You want to state your name and address for the record, please?
Andrea Burkert.
They're going to holler from up on top. All right, and you're one of the applicants here, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you lived down or been affiliated with the Fells Point area?
20 years, 20 plus.
And you're currently work over to Sound Garden?
Sound Garden, yes.
And who owns the Sound Garden?
My husband, Brian.
Okay. And along with that, you have experience in the alcoholic beverage business?
Yes.
You
I
were
do.
been a former licensee?
Yes, I was.
And the concept that you want to have here that you present to the various community groups is what?
It's basically going to be a lounge. We're going to use projectors to kind of wallpaper the property, the inside of the building. Very simple, piped-in music.
All right, is this
1,000 square feet.
a type of,
Yes. We have working with a lighting designer who actually did the Beijing Olympics. It's opening ceremony. So he's going to come in and do the projections. There's a place in Miami called Haven, which has a similar kind of layout floor plan. So it's very simple.
you want to say this before I give it to them?
I've seen some of them, thanks.
Along with that, you were going to be operating the place with Stephanie Kozma, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And Stephanie's been in the hospitality business for what, the past 20 years or so? I'll bring her up.
Oh,
in this
okay.
game.
Yes.
Is that correct? And then you met with at least 2 different organizations. There are some letters in the file, Mr. Commissioner, from Arthur Burchett, I think, and from Mr. Holmes.
Some emails. I'm going to go through these in a moment. And if you want me to
Yeah, if you can.
Go ahead and introduce him now.
The same one we have. Fells Point Main Street.
Your artistic renderings are the first exhibit. The letter from Fells Point Main Street in support is the second exhibit on behalf of the applicant. Third exhibit is a letter from David Holmes. Fourth exhibit will be a letter from Fells Point Residents Association, Arthur Pritchett's president.
And you also met with the other community group just recently, is that correct? And along with that, we have, it's just a very short petition, because we had more support from the community group, and we'll submit at this point from some of the residents in the area.
My fifth exhibit will be a one-page petition in support.
Let me ask you this question, and what do you think your hours of operation will be from when around?
I believe from 5 to 2, to 1 a.m., you know. regular
Mostly in the
hours.
in the
In the
evenings.
evening, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And along with that, in your application, you have not asked for live entertainment, correct?
No, not at this time.
Okay, and the type of entertainment you're talking about is mostly all visual,
Correct.
is that correct?
Yes.
And you will agree to be cognizant with the community and to go to the community, or you've been there for 20 years, you know what the community is.
We're very invested in the community.
Okay, I don't have any questions this one.
No.
All right, and Ms. Burkert, were you in fact the operator of one?
Yes,
Club One?
yes.
All right, and were you there full-time, on a full-time basis?
I was there, yes, I was.
All right, were you not able to meet with the Fells Point Community Organization? You were out of town?
I was out of town.
Did you meet with the Fells Point Residents Association?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Ms. Kuzma was at the other meeting.
all right, thank you very much.
You want to step up, Stephanie? Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Stephanie Kuzma, 2242 Fleet Street.
And then how long have you been living on Fleet Street?
I've been on Fleet Street since 1998.
All right, and that's in Fells Point, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And we submitted, and I think, it may or may not, this is a copy of your resume, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Let me see.
I have a copy of that, thank you.
Thank you.
Indicating the various areas that you've worked in, management and so forth.
Mhm.
And you're going to be a licensee along with Ms. Burkert in this case,
Yes, sir.
and you'll be on the premises.
Always.
And you have been, you went to the community groups,
Yes, both.
both of them, so you know what they're looking for from your operation, correct? And you think you'll be able to deliver that?
I believe so.
And since you've been down in that area since you said 99, was it?
98.
98? So you're familiar with what's happening in Fells Point?
Indeed. My first 5 years there, I worked at Max's on Broadway for Ron Furman.
Mm-hmm. And so you're familiar with the alcoholic beverage industry. Along with your resume, you've worked in various other hospitality businesses, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm nothing further.
All right, and you worked for Silo Point 5 last year?
I'm still there now, actually. I'm working on marketing and consulting.
You did, and you also worked, managed at Heavy Seas Ale House last year?
I was there opening as the team, and prior to that, I was at the Belvedere for about 10 years with the Al Bar on the 13th floor.
All right, thank you.
Mr. You want David, since you were talking so much before, might as well.
Do you have any questions for any of these witnesses? You're able to, and at this time, Joanne Massapost, Fells Point Community Organization, you're here.
I am.
You have the opportunity to ask questions of any of these witnesses if you like, in addition to put on your own testimony. We do have an email that we've received from you that we will consider putting into evidence at the appropriate time.
I guess I have a couple of questions that I addressed in the email. One of them is,
I'm gonna, well.
Go ahead.
At this point, I'm gonna let them continue because they have
Yeah,
another witness here.
that's
But
fine.
I will allow you the opportunity to ask questions of the two applicants who have already spoken, if you have specific questions to them after they're done with their testimony.
I'll defer for now.
Okay, thank you.
You want to state?
Sure. Dave Holmes. I live and work in Fells Point, and we're certainly delighted to not only see this particular property be renovated, but with the type of quality product and services that they're bringing in. It's really a needed for the area, and it certainly will be a nice amenity. I think for our development group, we were concerned about this property. Over the years, there were a number of rumors of certain individuals that were looking to purchase the property and certain types of businesses that would go in there that wouldn't blend in to the vision I think we all have for Fells Point. And so it certainly has always been a liability for a number of years in terms of what direction this property was going. We were thrilled to hear not only the team that was coming in to take control of the property, but the vision that they have. We think it's outstanding. It certainly will be a nice amenity for our community.
You think it'll be a nice compliment to your project up the street?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for us, that was a big concern, is who was going to eventually take that space, and we think it's a perfect complement.
Anything further?
All right, thank you.
Let me have
Thank
Mr. Brian Burker, just in case anyone wants to ask a question of his, but I don't plan to put him on right now.
Okay.
Our case in chief, subject to any questions that,
Board's going to permit Ms. Massapus to ask questions of either Mrs. Burkert or Ms. Kuzma, who have already testified, and they
First
spell
of
your
all,
name for the record. Thank you.
it's Massapust, Masopust.
You can back up a little bit.
Okay, well.
That's perfect. Perfect. Trying to be heard. Yes.
I also want to submit a packet I can give to the attorney, as well as to the liquor board, of other documents besides the email.
All right, you've handed us a packet here, an email that I believe we have in the file dated January 18th, 2013. There's an email from Mr. Burkert to Ms. Massapust dated December 8th, 2012. There's an extract of the board's decision from our decision of October 29th, 2009. And which we have the original right here, and we'll address that for sure. And there is a decision regarding something that happened at Club 1.
There was also a police report that you,
Police report, and this is related to Club 1, and then a decision extract on Club 1. All right. Mr. Kadensky, any objection to the
well,
admissibility of
I
these
don't know
documents?
the relevance until I get a chance to take a look
Sure.
at them. The question is whether it was when Ms. Burkert was a licensee or not. Oh, Sergeant Gentile, he lives again. Okay.
All right, any objection?
No objection.
Okay, we'll receive email from Joanne Massapus dated Friday, January 18th as the Protestants 1. Can we label you that? Protestants 2 will be the letter or email from Brian Burkert to Ms. Massapus as second exhibit, and then third exhibit will be documents regarding former licensed premises at 300 East Saratoga Street. Okay. Any questions at this time? Maybe
I'd
one
like
last
to make a
chance.
statement first, and
Ask questions, so I gave you the opportunity to cross-examine after the fact. Ms. Kuzma and Ms.
okay,
Burkert.
sure. One of the things that
Who's your question for?
Ms. Burkert,
Okay, come on up, Ms. Burkert.
Ms. Burkert stated that when she was the previous licensee at 300 East Saratoga Street, that she was, quote, there. According to the police report dated May the 27th of '05, on the day that the police were there, your husband was there and not you. So I would say that the question I would have is, how much of the time were you actually at that location operating the business?
Quite
Were you full-time?
Yes, I was there. I put my kids to sleep at night, and then, because I had 2 little ones, and then I went to the business, absolutely.
But you were not there the day of the police incident?
That day I was not there.
Okay.
I'm wondering if, at that point, we hadn't already sold 2000,
2005.
yeah. I'm not sure we had, I think we had sold by then.
According to the file, because according to the file for that location, you were still the licensee in '05, and that did not change until sometime in '06. In fact, the violation hearing before the Liquor Board was in January of 2006, at which time you pled guilty to all 3 violations, including the violation, excuse me, including violation of Rule 3-01 that says every licensee shall be the actual owner and operator of the business conducted on the licensed premises. Not only did you plead guilty to that offense, but the board found you guilty of that in the other 2 offenses as well. So clearly you were the licensee at the time of the incident. And also, it does speak to the issue, since the board found you guilty of that particular part of the law, that the board did not feel that you were, excuse me, completely the operator of that establishment, or I believe that that board at that time would not have found you guilty of that particular part of the law.
Calls for a conclusion.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Burkert? You're welcome to make a statement as well. I'm worried that last question was more of a statement than a question. So
Okay.
anything else you have for Ms. Burkert that's a question?
Is there a signed MOU with the Fells Point Community Residents Association?
There is not.
Ms. Burkert, is that your answer?
Yes, that's my answer.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Kuzma?
No, actually, Ms. Kuzma is the person that we actually knew the most about, because she herself, as well as Mr. Burkert, voluntarily submitted her resume. This is part statement, but I found it odd that in the email discussions with Mr. Burkett, that he actually said nothing about his wife's qualifications, didn't offer anything, didn't provide anything, and yet he certainly provided voluntarily, I might add, the resume for Ms. Kuzma, but shared no information, and in fact, quite frankly, presented that this was really primarily his project. And when I asked at the meeting, and unfortunately, and I understand why Ms. Burkett wasn't at the meeting. I don't hold that against her. They had previous plans for a vacation. Obviously, she can't be in the Dominican Republic in Fells Point. And quite frankly, in the middle of January, if I had a choice of which place to be, I would have chosen to be in the Dominican Republic as well. But when I said to Mr. Burkert at the meeting, it sounds like, your wife is actually going to be a front for you on this license. He replied, yes, that's true, because I cannot be on 2 liquor licenses. That raised some concern.
I think they just turned your mic down.
Okay. So what should I do?
Just keep talking.
Okay, so that raised some concerns for me, but I'll be honest with you, the reason I actually went and looked at the file was not about to check anything out about any of the applicants. I went down because because there had been an MOU referenced, and I wanted to see that since I'd not been provided a copy of it by Mr. Purchetts. So it was actually a bit of a surprise for me to find out that Ms. Burkett had been a previous licensee, and then Look, I kind of was a trained investigator by the Department of Juvenile Services back in my day, and one thing led to another, and I just decided that it was important for me to keep checking since I knew nothing about Miss Burkert. Had met her and had a chance to, didn't know that she had been a previous licensee, and that was when we found out about the violation hearings, the police report, and that sort of thing. And I guess it just had some concerns for me about whether or not she would actually be the person operating the business or whether it would be her husband. That having been said, You know, the other issue for me really has nothing to do with any of the applicants or with Mr. Burkett, but has to do really with the decision made by the Liquor Board back in 2009 when the license was held by cheerleaders. And the reason that is an issue for me is that it certainly had been the understanding of the community members who were present at that time and involved in the revocation hearing that it was the Liquor Board's intention that there would not be another liquor license at that establishment. As I indicated in my email, the written report issued by that board is a little confusing as to the board's intentions, and I think may have impacted the outcome of the vote at the Fells Point Community Organization. I also have to say that the information that we learned after the meeting about Ms. Burkert's previous license and the outcome of that was not known at the time of the meeting. I don't know what impact, if any, that would have had on the outcome of the vote of the people who were present at that meeting. But I think the most important thing actually is for the board to decide, I guess, whether or not its intention was that there not be a license at that location. I think that, you know, the community certainly thought that was the intention of the board. I'm reasonably sure, based on the comments that were made at the meeting, which I included in the email, that the community kind of felt like there was maybe a lack of trust as a result of the fact that we thought one thing, and now here we are going through this process, and we just, you know, I'm not sure what position that the board intended to take, or even, you know, should take. And if the board's intention was that there not be a liquor license at that establishment again, then we think this is an opportunity for the board to, with all due respect, perhaps correct a mistake that was made in the writing of the decision.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Massacus. Anything?
Let me just ask you a couple of rules, short question. One, you indicate the vote was a majority, they're not opposed to transfer, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and then regarding, that was your understanding, but upon reading the transcript, was that, when the fact that that license would never be in the Fells Point area, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Would you say that again?
Would you say, in the reading of the transcript, and I have Mr. Maslin here who did the hearing, was that that license would never be in that area, not that the place would never have a license?
That's where the confusion comes in, sir.
So the written word, you know, governs. And in this case here, how long have you been affiliated with this property? You known about this property, your history with it?
Which property?
This property here.
702 South 702 South Register happens to be my property. I mean, I've lived in Fells Point since October of 1979. Our organization spearheaded or took the lead on the revocation process for the license at Cheerleaders, and we're actually very pleased with the outcome of that. Further pleased by what we thought the board had indicated that there would not be a license in that location.
But in any event, your organization voted not to oppose this transfer.
Based on the information available at the time, that would be correct.
I have no further questions.
There's one other thing I'd like to add. If we look at Mr. Perchette's letter of support, it does appear that...
Please back up. We can barely hear you. You're so loud we can't even hear you.
I'm sorry.
All right, go ahead.
It would appear that that letter was, that support is partly contingent on there being a signed MOU. There is no signed MOU. I do not know if, in fact, that would change their position or not.
You say,
The letter from FIPRA states that it was the unanimous opinion of the group that it had no objection to the application, subject to entering into an acceptable memorandum of understanding with the Fells Point Residents Association.
all right, and Mr. Kadensky, your client did not sign the MOU that was attached to applicants
Having the
for.
problem that we had in South Baltimore, you got two different organizations now. Now you got three organizations, and you have dueling, you know, MOUs with, you know, Main Street. You'll have Ms. Manifest's organization, and it's too difficult to go
I
and do
understand that.
Well,
I'm-
we've
They did
done
not.
that.
They did not.
We've
so
done that in the past. We work together the Fells Point Residents Association and myself have worked together jointly on MOUs before that we have in fact presented to this board. Also, my organization has a history of working together, not just with the Fells Point Residents Association to do MOUs, but also with Fells Prospect. So, you know, I'm a champion, frankly, of working together with other organizations. Does that mean it's an easy process? No, because we sometimes have disagreements about what should be entered into in terms of an MOU, but we came to an agreement. The most recent thing, and actually, Mr. Kudensky, I'm not sure if you were the attorney in that case or not, but certainly Dog Watch is an example where FIPRA and myself came to an agreement about an MOU, so it's not impossible. The Fells Point Main Street usually doesn't get involved in the MOU process, and it's usually just between my organization and the Fells Point Residents Association, and we certainly would have been more than willing to try to negotiate a joint MOU had that been an issue presented to us.
And it was not in your case here, because it's nothing, doesn't mention that at all. It's just that they voted not to oppose the transfer, correct?
That's true, and the reason the MOU was not addressed by us is because we thought it had been addressed by the Fells Point residents.
But it doesn't mention it anywhere in your.
What it says in, well, what are you saying? What is not mentioned in my?
You don't have an MOU, and there was no mention of your MOU or anything like that, correct?
That is correct.
I have no further questions.
All right. Put you on the spot then, Mr. Kudensky. Ms. Kuzma and Ms. Burkett interested in signing a version of this particular MOU with Fells Point residents?
I can't answer that because when they were looking at it, then they got an opposition from the other group, and they weren't going to enter into anything when there wasn't an opinion on it. And quite frankly,
It's all about, just please, it's all about live entertainment, closing doors and windows, noise, no outdoor speakers, et cetera, et
I
cetera.
wish they would agree. They're not asking for a lot of entertainment.
Parties aren't asking for outdoor tables at this time. Parties aren't asking for live entertainment at this time. Okay. All right, Ms. Massapust, go ahead.
Well, really, that's what I was going to say about that proposed MOU, is that since the applicants are not asking for live entertainment, what I said in my email is that if the board chooses to grant the application, then we would request that the license specify that there be no live entertainment, including a DJ, and no outdoor table seating.
We'll say it right now. They're not getting it because they didn't ask for it, so they're definitely not getting it, so, not today. All right, anything else? Go ahead.
Nothing else on the record is that the problem that I had, and I think you know, is that this process becomes very laborious at this time, because they originally was put in October of this application, and it was postponed because of meeting with these, and I don't know, somewhere along the line, there's going to have to be one where the process is going to have to be, you put the application in, within 30 days you have a hearing. If the groups can't meet, they just can't meet, because there are going to be, you know, time constraints. In this case here, you have certainly Mr. Gordon, in this case, has endured all he can with regard to he being, you know, burned out of his business. He has one thing left of they're not going to rebuild it for an adult entertainment, which in some people would think is a good thing, because there's one less adult entertainment license that's going to be. Depends on your proclivities, but so I'm not going to get into that. And in this place here, we have the Main Street, you have the people in, it's a commercial building. Certainly, if the board grants the transfer, if they don't operate it properly, there'll be one less license down in Fells Point also. But I think they've gone to see everybody that can. They've talked to the developers up the street. You're going up and down Broadway, you see what it looks like, and you see what it's supposed to look like. This will be a fine addition.
All right, thank you. I'll give you a last word.
Oh, thank you. You know, one of the other things that I did address in the email were the, I'll call them 5 criteria that the board looks at in terms of assessing an application. Number 1 was the public need and desire. Your own records indicate that there are 36 other liquor license establishments in the general area. I counted 10 existing just in the 700 block of South Broadway. Regardless of how community organizations may have voted, I think that vote was more because of people's assumption that there had to be another license there, but also because of other people's relationships, maybe with Mr. Burkert. But clearly, there's no need to have another liquor establishment because there are already 10 in that block alone and 36 in the entire neighborhood. I do have to say that the concept is unique. So that's something that, we don't have, certainly not, can't deny that. It's a unique concept. It's actually kind of, interesting looking. That's not an issue. What impact will it have on community safety, parking, crime, et cetera? Well, any additional business, especially a bar business, is going to have an effect on parking, a negative effect on an already bad parking situation. I have absolutely nothing to support a statement that I have no way of knowing how it might possibly impact safety or crime or any of those other things, but certainly parking would be one issue. And I guess maybe that's it. I mean, as I said, obviously I have some concerns about who's really going to be running this business. I think that if you look at the report from the Liquor Board and the police report from 2006, it raises some questions. Maybe that was a one-time event. Things happen. But, Mr. Burkett himself indicated at our meeting that essentially his wife was going to be fronting for him because he can't be on 2 licenses. So we have some concerns about who's going to be actually operating that business. And, it raises issues for me about sort of circumventing the intention of the law in that. So I would ask the board to make a decision about whether or not a liquor license can be at that location. I think that's really the primary issue that I put before the board, since there seems to be some confusion about what the intention of the board was back in 2009, how the community interpreted that, and how the community is responding to the fact that there is another application for a license at that location.
All right, thank you very much.
In response to that, Mr. Burkett's here, and he did not, I don't want to get into this he said, she said, but he did not say that. Been down in Fells Point for 20 years. He certainly has been a fine operator of the business. It's the public need, and whether there's licenses, that you would never issue extra licenses in any building where there's 10 or 20 or 30. Capitol Grill, there's 2 or 3 licenses in Inner Harbor East and so forth. There was a license there for many, many years. That's why I gave you a little bit of history to things. Fells Point has always been known. They built parking garages for Fells Point like they did in South Baltimore to alleviate that. And certainly for the development of the place up the street, I think they met all the criteria. And of course, these particular people have to be the actual owners and operators of the business, or else they'll be in for a violation.
All right, thank you very much.
I actually would like to say one more thing, and that's because
All right, this is it.
Mr. Kadensky implied that I'm not telling the truth about a statement that I've made by saying that Mr. Burkett didn't say something that he in fact did say. I trusted Mr. Burkett to tell me the truth at the meeting. If I had thought he was going to come here today and deny that he said something, I would have actually gotten somebody who was present at that meeting to come to back me up.
All right,
I'll let him testify. No,
don't want to
never
hear
mind.
it. All right, thank you very much. We're off the record. Oh, it's easy. Yeah, we're gonna, I'll definitely help. All right, let's go on the record. We're in the decision phase of January 24th, 2013. Stephanie Kuzma and Andrea Burkett, Exile on Broadway, LLC, trading as Exile at 702 South Broadway. And we have here today Ms. Burkert and Ms. Kuzma to testify, co-applicants. Back in 2009, board revoked a license at this location in October of that year. And at that time, I said that this board is simply not prepared, not willing to allow our this liquor license to stay in Fells Point ever again. And we meant it. We had a problem with the licensee at that location at that time. Now, quite frankly, by default, we had a problem with the landlord at the location at that time. So that's 3 years ago that we made that decision, almost 3.5 years ago. In that time, the building has sat vacant, and now along comes Mr. and Mrs. Burkert, and they are known in the community. They've been there for a generation, a couple of businesses, including a business that Mr. Burkert, who is indeed a licensee, has in Fells Point, in addition to the other business that doesn't have anything to do with liquor. So at least they're a known commodity. And them being a known commodity might have had something to do with the fact that Fells Point Residents Association agreed not to object to the application, and then Fells Point Community Organization agreed not to object to the application. The board doesn't know. Ms. Massapus was here and testified to what she thinks could be the reasons why the feedback that was received occurred. It's hard for, and really, it's improper for us to speculate on it. What we see is a situation that, based on the applicant's testimony, involves Stephanie Kuzma, who nobody today has assailed her prior experience in the industry, somebody who's obviously got some experience in the business. Ms. Burkert is a former licensee, and there was a charge sustained against her 6 years ago, interestingly enough, for non-cooperation, because her husband was the one who apparently intervened with officers. I guess that's a double-edged sword. So it does appear that perhaps Mr. Burkert will be somewhat involved in this business. As a husband and wife, they are able to both be licensees, even though if they ever got divorced, they could both consider these businesses marital property, but they can't both be on the licenses. It is a legal quirk. And Ms. Burkert has a right to be on a liquor license. Just because her husband already is on one is irrelevant. So Mr. Burkert is somehow involved in this business. We'll determine that by marriage, by marital property, and maybe that's a good thing. And maybe that is the difference between us approving a license at this location with a landlord who was not exactly on top of her game 3.5 years ago when she had a possible arms dealer in her building. Now we have a known commodity, as I said, and somebody who you know how to get a hold of them if there's a problem at that bar. That makes the board feel a lot better. And when we did say 3.5 years ago, there's not going to be a bar there, we meant that to the extent that we don't live there. And if the community organizations had come back and opposed this project, we would not be substituting our judgment for them. But we don't live there. You live there. An FPCO lives there. An FPRA lives there. And they're saying we can live with it. And if they can live with it, then the board can too. But we'll make it clear that this location, having had a lot of problems in the past, this one's on us. So if there is misconduct that is proven, board's not going to have a lot of sympathy for you because we're giving 702 South Broadway another chance because you're involved. I just want to make that clear. So we wish you the best of luck. We're going to determine, based on the evidence, there is a public need and desire for this request, that there is a de minimis impact on the existing licensees, a uniqueness of services and products to be offered, and a negligible impact on the general health, safety, and welfare of the community, including crime, traffic, parking, and convenience. So give you the shot, wish you the best of luck. We really strongly encourage that Ms. Massapus continue to have your contact information, so if there's any problems going forward, they can be solved informally before having to come back to City Hall. All right? Thank you very much, all of you. All right, thank you, Ms. Massapus. We're off the record.
Yes.
Doug.